All right, I'm calling to order the work session, Swarthmore Borough Council, April 2nd, 2018. Roll call. I see that everyone, all members of council are present, as is Borough Manager Jane Billings and Borough Solicitor Bob Scott. I don't know if we're expecting the mayor later or not, but in any case, we'll get started. So in this portion of the meeting, we invite public comment from the audience, and I know we're going to get an update by Linton Stables on behalf of the Swarthmore Senior Citizens Association. Before we do that, are there any other members of the public that care to come up and comment?
I'd kind of like to hear theirs first before.
Oh, okay, all right. Well,
Thanks.
Linton, you have the floor if you want.
Thank you, Mr. President, and my name is Linton Stables. I'm at 285 North Swarthmore Avenue, and I am here to make the first of our quarterly reports. We've decided to make a quarterly report to the council on how we're spending your money and ours. So these are all the projects that we propose to do to help implement the Aging in Place Task Force recommendations. There were 7 projects proposed, and we have acted on 6 of them already. It's only 3 months in. And in addition to that, we've actually completed 3 of them. Now, mind you, we haven't received any of the funding yet, but that's okay.
This month.
It's coming. We know it's coming. But anyway, we just want to report on what we're doing. We have enough money to fund these things until we do get the money. The first thing I want to bring to your attention is actually on this postcard here that you received. And we printed a lot of these, and you'll be seeing more of them as we start to advertise the Community Organizations Directory. And what this is an online directory of every single nonprofit and some for-profit organizations that do good things for the community are listed here on the borough's website. And we're going to be getting the word out in the coming months about that. We also created, again in the digital realm, we created our own website and our e-newsletter so that we're getting word directly to seniors about senior activities and things that are of interest to them. Last weekend, actually 2 weekends now ago, we did put on the Senior Wellness Fair. And I hope you had a chance to come by, and if not, that you at least heard about it, because it was a huge event, and we had no idea. we put this on thinking, I think we started thinking we would have 50 people. Then we decided maybe we should plan lunch for 75. We had over 150 people registered for the day, and so it's a huge success. We plan to do it again. In fact, you can put on your calendar right now, March 30th of 2019, because that will be the 2nd annual Senior Wellness Fair, we hope. All of these things so far that I've talked about have to do with information and getting information out there, which was one of the findings of this Aging in Place Task Force, which the 2 things that people lack are knowing about stuff and then getting there. So information and transportation. So we're working on the information part. The other projects that we are working on are the time bank, which is well underway. We have a steering committee, which is not the senior group, so that was always our intent, was that we were going to get another organization to take this on. So we have, under our umbrella, we have created a steering committee to do that, and led by Ann Torgrosa, who is well known to you and also a leader in the community, and will do a good job getting that going. We did a minor version of our travels, senior travels, and we took a trip to Franklin Institute, several of us, and that was great fun, and I think we'll use that as a model for doing more of that. And then the last project, the next to the last project is the Trails project, which is Swarthmore Trails. There's a bunch of them already, and what we want to do is kind of collate them. But this is a better weather thing to do, so that's why we're putting that one on. And then finally, we have a project to sort of try to integrate the town and the college a little more on senior activities. And the thing that we've done on that hasn't happened yet, but in May we'll be hearing from a senior at the college who did her thesis on what makes time banks successful or not. And she's going to give us a talk in the evening so that more people can come about that topic. So that's where we are. We think we spent close to $7,000 on the projects that we've done so far. And we hope that you find that the money is being well spent.
Thanks very much. That's a great report. And
Sorry.
yes,
One more thing.
sure, absolutely.
Part of the implementation of all this was to hire somebody to help us out. We actually have done that, and she started today. Stephanie McDonough is going to be our administrator part-time, working on a contract basis, and so she's going to be working for us. I also wanted to mention that at the committee that has been doing all this work, who's being led by Bill Davis, Dr. Bill Davis, also got the AARP designation for Swarthmore as an age-friendly community. So this parallels the World Health Organization designation by the same name. So just, I think that's it, right? I had to be reminded of that one more time.
Thanks again, Larry. That's a great report. We really appreciate what you're doing and all the work you and everyone else associated with it is doing. And as far as the funds go, I just want you to know you have the full faith and credit of the Borough of Swarthmore. And the check is, I think, probably almost in the mail.
The money was rolling in last week. I assure you it's there.
Yeah, great. Thanks again. Is there anyone else that would care to address council at this time?
Yes.
Yes. If you would step up to the mic and state your name and your address.
My name is Linda Howe, and I live at 215 Riverview Road. And actually, I'd kind of like to start with a question for council. I'd like to know how you're progressing on my request, or my husband and my request, to issue a cease and desist letter to the owners of 207 Riverview for their use of the accessory building.
This really, we're not kind of holding a question and answer session on that or any other subject right now. I think at an appropriate point in the meeting, we may, I may ask for someone to comment on that, but this really isn't, it may seem like it, but in fact it's not really the time or place for that kind of exchange.
I understand. I was wondering if you could give me an update, but if not, I would like to reflect on some of the comments that were made at the last Borough Council meeting that I was not able to attend, but I understand was attended by the owner of 207 Riverview. I understand at that meeting, and just in talking to people in the community, that there is some misunderstanding about the historical use of this property. I do know that at the zoning hearing board, Ms. Billings testified that the property had pretty much been used continuously, or pretty much been occupied continuously. And I'd also like the borough to know that under oath I testified that that is not the case. I moved there in 2007 and the building was occupied for storage and whatnot, but for the first approximately 3 years that I lived there, no one occupied the dwelling, no one slept there overnight or anything of the sort. After about 3 years, Lee Barford moved there to assist his aging parents, and he did use the accessory building. And then when he purchased the property, that building again was empty, other than being used for storage and things like that. But no one slept there, no one lived there. Until someone named Paul moved there, and he, as far as I'm concerned, illegally rented it for about 2.5 years. So I wanted to clarify that. And, wanted to point out that, because the property had been used illegally for a matter of a couple years, that doesn't really justify the continued use of the building as a dwelling. I'd also like to comment on Ms. Winslade's letter. Talked extensively about community spirit, and she indicated that she felt, I guess, that I was in some way lacking in community spirit because I declined to negotiate with her about the use of this building. And that's true that I have declined, and my husband has declined too. We first declined when David Boonin came to us with a set of conditions for the use of the property that he had worked up with Ms. Winslade. None of those conditions included ceasing to use the building the way it had been used, the way it was being used for short-term renters. And I didn't feel that Dave Boonin was a neutral, disinterested party because he had indicated that he was quite interested in having his family stay there for visits. We were also approached at the time of the zoning hearing board. Ms. Winslade's attorney approached our attorney and asked if we wanted to negotiate some sort of agreement. And we, our attorney said, well, if you really don't want the building used for a bed and breakfast or lodgers, there's not really any point in negotiating. And so there wasn't, and I didn't do that. But probably more importantly, the reason why we haven't been very interested in negotiating, because I don't think that something like that would be enforceable. If two neighbors come together and decide that they're going to tolerate a use of a property that is in contraindication to what's permitted in that community, I don't think that would be enforceable. So I didn't see that it made any sense at all for me to negotiate with Ms. Winslade. There was also discussion about, I think Ms. Long testified that she was, she was very happy to be living in Swarthmore, that she chose this community intentionally, and that showed a lot of great community spirit. And I would just say that if someone really wants to be a good member of the community, that probably the best thing to do wouldn't be to move into a contested property prior to the zoning hearing board issuing an opinion about how that property could be used. And they did indeed move into that property prior to the zoning board's decision. And I think that doesn't really show great community spirit. I think that there are plenty of places that folks could move in and live in this community. This morning I looked at the zoning census. There are 1,882 occupied dwellings in Swarthmore as of 2016. 25% of them are rental properties. These rental properties are certainly affordable. 48% of them cost less than $1,000 a month. 83% cost less than $1,500 a month. Ms. Winslade testified at the zoning hearing board that she was getting rent of about $1,300 a month for that property. So I think it would probably be affordable for the people that are living there now to find another suitable rental property in Swarthmore to become a full member of the community. There was much talk, I think, about how caring and interested in being, engaged members of the community in Swarthmore. And I think that that's great, but I don't think that the council, and I would urge the council not to make their decision based on personalities. I think the decision should be made based on what, is permissible by our zoning code. This building is an accessory building. Ms. Winslade describes it as an extension of her home. It is not an extension of her home. It's a separate, detached building. There is no special exception, variance, subdivision, conversion, or anything of the nature on file to indicate that this is a two-family property. It's a single-family residential property. There keeps on being this suggestion that these lodgers are part of Miss Winslade's extended family. Yes, a family can include lodgers in Swarthmore, but the definition includes that they need to occupy the dwelling. It's not okay to just say that, well, they're lodgers and so they're part of the family, and just, basically read out the clause of it that says that they need to occupy the dwelling. These people are not occupying the dwelling. And I'd like to say, in Ms. Winslade's letter, she said that this is unique and it wouldn't apply to anything else. Yes, every property in Swarthmore is unique, but this is not the only accessory building that has plumbing in it in Swarthmore. I think if the borough doesn't enforce the zoning code here, it will send a very clear message to anyone that's got an accessory building that it's perfectly fine to rent out that accessory building to at least 2 lodgers. That would be a very significant departure from what the policy has been. And I don't think that the borough should do that without a full discussion and probably, an adjustment or a revision to the zoning code. So then I would just like to again urge you to enforce the zoning code and ask the owner of 207 Riverview or issue a cease and desist letter to her to stop renting out that property to short-term renters, to long-term rentals. It really does, adversely impact, my neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Judy Galgon. I live at 327 Riverview Road. I am also requesting that the council issue the cease and desist letter to the owners of 207 Riverview Road. I believe that to do otherwise would be to reward the behavior of property owners who have violated the law knowingly. I was friends with the prior owner and they came to me. I used to practice law. Well, I currently practice law, but I used to practice full time. And they confessed to me that they would love to put in there that they could rent that garage unit, which is known as the accessory or dwelling unit. But they discovered they did not feel comfortable doing it since they had not been given any sort of legal backing for it. I think they had contacted Ms. Billings at the time, and their realtor, neither the realtor nor the prior owners felt comfortable listing it that way, that it was acceptable to use as a rental property. The new owners moved in and immediately they started to use that accessory dwelling as a rental property. They have used it, in my eyes, as a type of motel for short-term rentals. I know we're in a community here where many homes rent to college students. I myself did so when I lived on Rutgers Avenue. It's essential for some people's income basis to do that in our community. However, I believe that people should use their properties in accordance with the law, and currently that is an unlawful use of the garage. I also do not believe that it should be permitted, even if you were to decide, yes, well, I'm asking you, please do not give her permission to rent at any time because it would be rewarding her prior illegal activities. That's my position. My husband is home a lot. He's retired now. He plays at the soccer field with our dog. He plays with the children who live at 207. They're delightful children. So this is nothing personal.
Understood. Thanks very much.
So thank you.
Not only is this not a question and answer session, but we're not holding any kind of a hearing. This isn't a meeting of the zoning hearing board. It's not even a meeting of the Swarthmore Borough Council's Planning and Zoning Committee where these matters have been raised. And we welcome all of your comments and we want to hear your opinions and your views, but I just want to be clear, this isn't a hearing, we're not taking evidence, we're not going to make a decision based upon what we're hearing in a public comment period here tonight. Anyone else care to comment?
Hi, thank you. I hadn't planned on speaking, but since my neighbors are here,
My name is Sharon McGee. Can you hear me?
Raise it up a little bit.
What's that?
Perfect.
Okay, I'm at 209 Riverview, and my house is the house that is the twin house next to the main house in question of that accessory building. And as my friends and neighbors have, so I don't want to repeat what they said, but I also wanted to say, as someone who is over 65, I certainly commend council for all your efforts for seniors in town. And I realize that there's some plans happening that will make it easier for people like me to stay in town. So what concerns me is that the use of this property is somehow being lumped into what may happen and what may be decided for an aging in place use of property. And I'm not sure that one has anything to do with the other. I support everything we're doing, but this property, when I bought my house 18 so years ago, I was told specifically by whoever listed the house, and it was there in the listing, that that was not a rental property. And I had to be convinced of that before I would buy that house as a single parent with 2 daughters. I would also like you to know that if you were to step into my house actually is closer in terms of the entrance to that accessory building than the ones who are landlords in that building. My house is closer. My door is closer to that building than any of theirs. I'm home, working from home, so I have more oversight of that building than what goes on back there. My rear of my house faces it. So, again, not to repeat what they said, but I did want you to know that there are many voices that have many reasons for hoping that the law is enforced. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comment on that or any other subject? If not, I'm calling the public comment period to a close. And we'll turn to the environment committee. Lauren, is there anything going on?
Not too much, but
Thanks, Lynn.
the Environment Committee is going to work with the EAC to kind of come up with some possibilities for, making sure that open space remains in Swarthmore for a while. And we'll kind of get back to you with more details about that. We're sort of gathering all the pieces to sort of make that conversation go forward. A little detail that's very timely right now is the EAC is encouraging people to buy mulch. It's mulch season, even though it snowed yesterday. And it is available in smaller amounts. Is that correct, Jane?
That's correct.
So we're looking at what kind of amount?
You can buy a cubic yard, 2 cubic yards, or 4 cubic yards. Some people think there's a discount if you buy the larger amount. It's not quite true. It's always been less than double to buy more because there's the transportation cost is the same no matter what size load you're buying.
Right.
But so I think it's 50 or 55, I can't remember, for the smallest load, 70, 110, whatever.
Okay, so thanks. So
Thank you.
That's really, much more agreeable to a lot of people to buy this.
Correct.
So anyway, EAC is encouraging the purchase of leaf mulch. It's very it's locally produced, possibly comes from your own yard, you never know. And we are meeting, the Environment Committee is meeting on April 19th.
Did you not meet last month?
We did.
You did? Okay. I thought so.
And this is the only mic that works, just so on this side.
Is that it, Lauren?
Yes.
Thank you. Michael, anything?
I have nothing, and the Finance Committee will not be meeting this month.
No meeting this month. Okay. Sarah, general government.
Yeah, so before I get started with what the committee discussed last time we met, I just want to remind everybody that the Book It 5K race is this Saturday, and it's in support of our library, the Swarthmore Library, as well as the Ellen Kate Furness libraries. So hope to see you there. What we discussed at our last meeting, we discussed a lot about our communication strategy with the borough. We wanted to have that discussion, as you all recall, before the storms, before everything all came about, but then with everything that happened with the recent storms, we thought it was actually more pertinent to discuss right away. we have some developments with that in terms of general communications. Elise and Jane have worked, and now we have a Facebook page, an official Swarthmore Borough Facebook page. So please go ahead and visit and like the page. It has all the information about the mulch and about everything else you could possibly want to know coming from the borough. We also have a kind of new information train where Jane or somebody will send an email to a bunch of us, and we kind of push out some of the things on social media. We're trying to use Nextdoor a little bit more, things like that, just to get out a little bit more on social media so that people can know what's going on and use that as ways of getting their information. We also talked about, just in terms of disaster and storm communication, we're going to be working with the public safety committee on that. And we talked a little bit more about the alert systems that are already in place, like the Delco alerts and the Notify Me alerts that for the borough uses. And we want to push that information out there to get more people to sign up for those things, because that can have a lot of useful information. There's already been an ad, I think, in the Swarthmorian about it, and we're trying to get that out there for everybody. And then we discussed the Swarthmore College voting situation again. We're still in talks with trying to figure out how best to help the college students be able to overcome some obstacles to voting. And the next step, as we came together as a committee to decide, was that we could maybe write a letter to the Board of Elections, the County Board of Elections, asking for the Board of Elections to consider having the college students all vote in one polling place. Because right now they're voting in separate polling places. So as I come up with that letter, I'll bring it to council and we can have further discussion on that. We will be meeting this month. We're going to be meeting the third Monday in April, so that's April 16th at 7:30 here.
Sarah, on the communication strategy, did the committee discuss, we talked before about who's going to kind of be in control, and you mentioned like using Nextdoor more than using, we have a Facebook page, which is great, but is Elise going to be in charge of that, or how's that going to work?
So we didn't actually discuss like an official person on council to do that, but the way we're kind of testing the waters now, I would say, and Jane's been like on it for emailing as soon as there's information that needs to be put out there, and quite a few of us are on that email list. It's like myself, Anita, people who are already using it.
And we've been sharing information that's already on the town center page. Hopefully that doesn't dissuade people from looking at our page if they feel like they've seen it before. We took something from the library page. We see that a lot on Facebook, people sharing other people's stuff. So right now we are putting on our page, it seems appropriate to put on anything that's directly from the borough, like when we're going to be closed or things like that. And we've been putting on when the next yard waste collection is, because it's always causes issues, so that's kind of nice. And then putting on anything from an organization that the borough directly supports. So that's going to be the fire company, the community center, SRA, the Senior Citizens Association, which means there are going to be organizations in town that would not necessarily have their information posted unless they're partnering with a borough organization, like the Swarthmore Horticultural Society, which does sell stuff. If they are partnering with the tree committee or the EAC, then it would go on. But other than that, just gets a little, it gets a little harder to draw the line of when you put stuff on an official government website. So that's what we're using right now. That's what we talked about in committee, and we'll see how that goes. Town center is a little looser. Anita puts on stuff that's sort of anything that's happening in town, concert events that are a private venue, so that takes care of that. And then the library obviously has a page that's mostly related to there. So that's what we're trying for now. Hopefully that won't disappoint some of the organizations that I think kind of always think of themselves as governmental, but they really are not.
Right, and also in terms of just posting on Nextdoor, I know that I've received a lot of positive feedback when Jane sent an email out and I posted that, I copied and pasted the information on Nextdoor, and there were a lot of people who thanked it, which I guess is what you do on Nextdoor, and then also sent me some direct messages to ask further questions, which I was able to answer, or I would go to, I would ask Jane for the official answer, and then I would answer it then. So, testing the waters, it seems to be working
Yeah.
well, but we're
Can I make a
still.
comment? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, please.
I think this is all great, and I think having a Facebook page is a great thing to do. I still think we need a written social media policy for all of us, that maybe Bob, if you think that's okay,
Yeah.
for some of the reasons.
I've got a couple
Right,
on the
you
list
said,
of the towns
yeah.
right now.
Because the thing
Yeah.
you always wonder about is, like, what happened during the storm with next door was really terrific. But you can imagine a lot of scenarios where people are kind of wondering, well, I saw something on next door or somewhere else. Should I respond to it? If so, what should I say? You know what I mean? It almost seems like there ought to be some clearinghouse or something where, so that we don't have separate people saying different
Then
things.
you also want to make it clear that you're not creating a public forum,
Right.
which
That's
then
the
leads
issue.
to First Amendment rights, meaning anybody can put any
Yeah.
obnoxious cockamamie thing on there.
Okay.
And you want to reserve the right to remove comments that you find to
Okay.
be inconsistent with the message that the borough wants
Right.
to put forth.
In the borough's emergency operations manual, which will probably come up in the public safety committee, there is a position of public information officer, and that's, sort of having a single funnel to which things
Who is
can
it?
go. Well, I think it was me in the last one, but it doesn't have to be. I mean, it doesn't have, I mean, when you have a manager, it's not a bad idea. In some communities, it's the police chief. In other communities, boroughs, it's the mayor. I think that's something that can be discussed. I mean, the last update of that manual was, you looked at, was 10 years ago. It's been quite a while. So it may feel like there's something different. It was before there was any social media at all. So you do need somebody who's going to be on constantly
Right.
to answer these questions, so it's changed, which could be a manager. I'm not saying it can't be,
Right,
but I think
right.
once you see that manual, once it gets into public safety, it will help drive policy.
So I think Mary's right. We need Bob's assistance in working up some kind of a policy. And I guess your two committees, Sarah and Mary, will work on all of that.
Right, so that's what I was thinking, like, we were going to work together with the committees and then, take some things, and we can figure out,
I'll send you one I just worked on for Lansdowne.
Great.
And I think I have another one as well, so.
Great. Anything else, Sarah?
No.
Great, thanks. Public safety, Mary.
Am I next?
Yes.
Probably.
Oh, I'm sorry, planning and zoning. I skipped planning and zoning. Sorry, Betsy.
Let's see, we met on the 22nd at 7:30, and we discussed, you can hear me, right? And we discussed some of the updates, well, we were hoping to discuss some of the updates to the aging in place recommendations, but unfortunately the planning committee was not able to meet the night before because of weather, but Jane's got a nice ordinance brewing. So I have really high hopes for that, using some language that's already in the zoning code. I think we might have discussed that, but so we're looking forward to seeing that coming down the pike, hopefully this month. We also had a discussion of the zoning complaint that has been raised concerning 207 Riverview. Given that we've all had a chance to pretty extensively review the documentations around the property and consult with the borough solicitor and the zoning officer. We discussed the fact that there had been the prior action and the ruling by the zoning board, and that in Swarthmore at this point in time we have adopted a rather broad definition of family, which is partly in compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. And that in the Pennsylvania Municipalities Code, any ambiguity is usually resolved in favor of the property owner. And that this property has some pretty unique zoning accommodations that were granted in 1978. And it also has a pretty extensive rental history from what we know. So we moved to we passed a motion to, at this time, to recommend no further zoning action to the full council. However, we do also want to start charging a second trash fee for the second dwelling unit, and we will be communicating with the county regarding the property tax assessment on what appears to be a multifamily dwelling. In addition, we had 2 subdivision and land development applications. Do you want to talk me through this a little?
Well, I can't remember how this has gone with this particular council. All the zoning hearing board applications do go to the planning and zoning committee for review. Mary, I can't remember, did you discuss all of them or only the ones that the committee was going to recommend taking action on?
You mean in this past meeting or just as a practice?
As a practice, what did we do?
Okay. I think you always brought them to our attention just to make us aware of what there was.
Right.
And then if we thought something needed further discussion, we did that. And then if we thought it needed to be discussed with all of council, we would come and do that.
Right, so there were 2, and the one that came was a sort of standard run-of-the-mill dimensional variance request, and those are hardly ever acted on, and I don't think those normally come to the full council. You'll see them advertised and posted, but. So.
Right, and the other one is, I guess, a little bit stickier. The application at 315 Maple. And after discussion of that and review of the zoning code, we decided to recommend to council that, I guess I appear as a representative of council to the zoning hearing board to speak towards a strict interpretation of our zoning code in that case.
So maybe what we can do is send out that packet. It was a request, the homeowner was requesting to use an accessory structure in an expanded fashion that the Planning and Zoning Committee felt could be a residence. Rented out, this is an in-law suite. You all right?
You all right?
I've had a cough, I'm sorry. It's the air blowing from up there is doing it. Go ahead.
You don't want to, you should have water at the table, most places do. Right, so I can send out a copy of that application. I don't believe that I'm not quite sure what the final plan is going to look like. This is a plan that came in for review by me as the zoning officer, and I wrote a letter to the applicant saying that it appeared to me that it was an in-law dwelling and those were not allowed under the zoning code. So the request is challenging my decision as a zoning officer, which is fine. That's perfectly legitimate use of the zoning hearing board. And so we're just waiting for the final plans. So if council wants to make a decision as a whole, whether they agree with the planning and zoning committee, I think you need to see those plans before you can sort of act on that.
Yeah, that's right.
And finally, in light of some of these issues that have been coming up, we are going to take on as a task working on some of the language in the zoning code, including looking at maybe refining how we define a dwelling unit and also how we define a family. And we will be meeting this month on the 26th, I believe at 7:30.
Just a quick note about the, since we've been discussing accessory structures, the ordinance that is currently sort of floating before the Planning Commission is to allow some congregate housing for the elderly, but all within existing structures. There's nothing currently before the Planning Commission on use of accessory dwellings as living spaces.
But you're talking about the construction of a new dwelling or let's say the complete, transformation of an existing structure.
Correct.
Is what, yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. And they're fairly small scale units, but yes, so our zoning code already allows congregate housing for the elderly as a definition. They just are in zoning districts that don't really have any place for them. So this would expand the use. And the way it's written, it would be by conditional use, which means they would have to be approved by the Planning Commission and Borough Council. And then there's a whole set of conditions about how much space you have to have, how much open space you have to have to allow to be used for congregate housing for the elderly. I think the age is 62 under the current
62
definition.
and a spouse.
We don't really love the definition, but it's sitting there right now.
Although there was also some discussion in planning and zoning about trying to have a much stricter interpretation in general about these accessory dwelling units and any requests that came through around construction or renovation with the accessory dwelling units, given some of what's scuttling around right now. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I think you guys were even as sure as saying no bathrooms, no plumbing, no.
I was kind of
Right.
saying that I would like to see a policy whereby any renovation that proposed putting plumbing into an accessory dwelling, an accessory unit, would automatically be rejected and have to go to, if someone wanted to appeal it, have to go to the zoning hearing for it. So.
And then they could determine that on a case-by-case basis.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. But that's a work in progress.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Betsy. Anything else?
No?
Thank you. All right, now public safety.
Now, public safety. Well, as Sarah was saying, public safety intended to meet the following night to talk about some of the same things about emergency notifications
Yeah.
with regard to fire and police, and we had yet another storm, so we didn't meet that night. So we will be meeting this month, that's the 17th of April at 7:30 p.m. And we will take up that discussion again, even though hopefully we're done having storms. The other thing that I wanted to mention tonight is that the borough is going to be purchasing a new police car, and that is something that requires us to pass a resolution, correct? Okay.
To a lease, it's a lease
Okay.
finance.
Lease finance. So Bob's going to, I believe, have a resolution ready for us to look at prior to next time?
Yeah,
or-
the lender put together a packet, the
Mhm.
financing company, so there is a resolution already. I just saw it tonight for the first
Right,
time.
me
You'll
too.
have it for next week.
Okay, because do you do an opinion letter
Yeah.
for us? Okay, so an opinion letter, and we'll have time to look at it
Yeah.
before we have to do anything
Yeah,
next.
it would be a week tonight.
Week from tonight.
That's what the chief is requesting.
Yes, because I think, do we already have the police car, maybe?
Yeah, I was saying there must be something, because there did seem to be a
Yeah.
hurry
I
there.
think we're kind of doing this
Yeah.
retroactively.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not
So
that.
this isn't another police car?
No.
This is the one
This is
that's
the
already-
one we
This is the
just
one you
got.
already have, so,
Well, we got it recently.
yeah, yes, so it's more of like a housekeeping thing.
And it was purchased through the state cooperative purchasing program, which we use a lot. It's called CoStars.
Which means you don't have to advertise for bids, so you normally would for any purchase over $20,000. It's a $35,000 purchase. Purchase through the state cooperative, you don't have to go through that
Okay.
advertising process.
Okay.
So I just wanted to make you aware of that.
Okay.
That'll be on the, yes, I'm
Well,
sorry.
what's up with the Civil Service Commission? They have to meet again to do what? I was confused about that. Because they asked me a question and I didn't know.
They have to meet again because they have to vote to authorize the committee to administer the next phase, well,
They have to certify the list, I believe.
the list,
Certify
that's
the
right,
list,
the
okay.
list. Because the testing, the oral testing is done now.
Right,
That's
if
right.
the results
I'm
are
sorry.
in, they have a ranking, which
Mhm.
needs to be certified by them as the official ranking.
Right. So they need to do that.
Okay, and it has to be advertised, right? They can't just meet without.
Correct,
Yeah.
their meeting has to be advertised.
Okay, so I'll let them know that. They asked me that. So I was,
Oh.
I guess so. I mean, I
Okay.
can't imagine they could meet without
No, it
advertising.
has to
Well,
be
it doesn't have
advertised.
to.
Yeah. Is there ever a time when it doesn't have to be
I
advertised?
can't imagine.
Not for an official vote that needs to get,
Yeah.
that's
So.
a fact.
No problem.
So,
Well, she was on it. I mean, she asked me the right question. I just,
okay.
all right, that's good. Got it.
Thank you. And that's it for public safety. Again, we'll just meet this month on the 17th.
Thanks, Mary. Ross, Public Works, Parks and Recreation.
Okay, so we met on March 22, the committee. Great news, the Porta Potty is back in Little Crum Creek Park, and it seems like we're going to be able to keep it there year-round. There's some question about that before, but there are already funds in the budget to do that, and people like having it there, so that's a service. At our committee meeting, we thanked Cuzzy Rolls, the Public Works Manager, and their staff for the snow removal during all these storms. And I specifically thank them for doing a good job and for the sacrifice they make at night, clearing the streets and the sidewalks when the rest of us are safe in bed and they're out doing that job in terrible weather. And by the way, I did ride the town one of these storms with Cuzzy as he plowed, and they're very skilled because they do a lot and they know how to do it. But for myself, I was like, I would be crushing cars, and they really have a lot of skill, and they know how to go through an intersection and not leave the snow in the middle of the intersection, and they know how to get around things, and so they do their job quietly and with not a lot of fanfare. So I just wanted to thank them. We've got the pedestrian project going ahead, the crossings, and that's not done yet because the bump outs are not done yet. Anything, Jane?
The schedule's really aggressive. I mean, today obviously didn't help. I don't think they worked today, but their project schedule has them done a week from Friday. So they're doing, because they had to keep the intersections open, they're doing sort of two corners of each of the intersections where the pedestrian lights are going at a time. They'll fill those, then they'll move to the other of those. So they should be pouring concrete this week. And then they're also finishing up, Crescent was not done. There were a couple curb cuts there. They're finishing up Maple. Something on College Avenue that I can't quite figure out because it looks like that's done to me, but they insist they're doing something there. So that's all getting finished up.
And the buttons to activate the lights go on at the end of the process?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We hope they work.
Yes.
Have not seen them yet.
Okay. And then I'm not even sure if this is Public Works, this might be Public Safety, but the speed bump thing, do you want to say anything about that? Or Jane?
Well, the installation is Public Works anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. That will be done when we do the roads,
Correct.
basically, so that we don't have to repave the road or pave it twice.
Are those going in where the bump outs are, or is that?
No, that's a completely separate thing. That happened in the prior council when there were questions about Yale Avenue, and there was a lot of discussion about where they would be.
Between Dickinson and Park, I forget.
Yeah.
Dickinson, between
No,
Dickinson.
No, the other
Dickinson
direction.
spot.
Yeah.
Right,
Little
correct,
Park.
right. And then we decided the street really should be paved first.
Yeah.
So
So that's
at
what-
the same time, not first and then
Yeah.
delay the speed bumps. But yeah, because otherwise you'd be digging up the speed bumps when the street got in more shape.
Yes.
So whenever that part of the street gets paved, the bumps will go in.
Right, which should be this year.
Okay, and then the main business we had was, again, our third session on the question of a possible ordinance on sewer laterals. We had a great session, and we had some outside speakers. Again, the borough engineer was present really just to listen and participate, but the main speaker was Dave Grady, who was the assistant manager of Nether Providence. I think we told you before there are 8 other municipalities like Rose Valley and Nether Providence that have already done this. We asked Dave Grady to come in and give us their experience, and he went through all the technicalities. It was really great for us to hear the technical things about the kind of test and how you do it and the ordering, how you order various things. I'm not going to go into any of that. His bottom line was there was some initial resistance in the first year, pretty much only by realtors to the ordinance, but the realtors in the community got used to it pretty quickly, and it has become routine. And they really only end up doing about 10 properties per year because it's a point of sale ordinance, so it's only done when the house is being sold. And he said that he thought the ordinance is a good thing. They're glad that they have it, and it has environmental benefits, it has some cost benefits, but the real benefit is making sure critical infrastructure is serviceable in the community. And there's as much line footage of sewer line between the houses and the road as there is in the road. If you picture all the houses and each one has a line going into it, it's a lot of sewer line footage, and it's critical infrastructure. So that was very useful. John Galligan, who's the president of the Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling Contractors Association came in. He was a technician, but he also talked about how his association, basically the Plumbers Association, who does a lot of this work, worked with Nether to draft the ordinance so that it met Nether's needs. And then they have, training sessions they push out in general to all the plumbers, and they'll push out, by the way, here's a session on Nether, here's a session on Rose Valley, here's a session. So there's a way to get the training out there to do this. So that was what we did. We're at the point now where we asked the borough manager to draft a possible ordinance that we will look at our next session. And our next session will be the usual time. Thursday, it'll be April 26th at 8:30 a.m. So if anybody has any interest in that, I encourage them to come and talk with us. And that is our report.
Thanks very much, Ross. Sure. Appreciate that. Is there any other business come before council at this point? If not, I'm going to ask Mayor Jim Carney to give us his words of wisdom.
Thank you, David. I wanted to start by echoing Sarah and tell people to come out and support the library this weekend with the cooking. It's a great, fun event. Even there's, besides the race, there's also lots of other things, including music in the amphitheater, which is a good thing. No ukuleles this time, but you're still there. But you will get a chance for ukuleles if you come on Earth Day on April 22nd, which is the Great Swarthmore Cleanup organized by Town Center, and it's an opportunity to come out and pitch in and do everything from help paint the bottoms of lampposts that need to be painted, or build shelves in the storage shed, or pick up trash over on Myers Avenue and things like that. We're hoping for a great turnout and to turn it into a more borough-wide affair next year. This year it's pretty much centered on the Town Center, but it'll be early afternoon. I think it's like 1 to 4. I think is the time for it, and a party afterwards at the amphitheater again with Hobbs Grilling Burgers and ukulele music and general fun stuff. So I encourage everybody to celebrate spring and come out and help get the borough tip top. And that's all, David. Thanks.
Is that all, David?
No.
It's afternoon.
Afternoon. That'd be the 1 to 4 part.
Okay, you said that.
There's a sign up on next door.
Early morning.
Is it on next door?
I need to put a sign up on next door.
Is it on next door? I know it was
Yes,
up.
yes,
I thought
yes.
it did on the webpage.
Yeah, we'll put it up. I don't think we'll put it up yet.
But, okay.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate that. This being a work session, we actually have a second public comment period. So anyone who would like to address council, feel free to get up to the mic, state your name and address, and we're happy to hear from you. Sure. I'm going to ask you to, I know you've already done it,
Right,
but please state your name and address again.
My name is Linda Houck. I live at 205 Riverview Road. I'm very pleased to hear that the zoning and planning committee decided to look at the assessment at 207 Riverview, because that's something that I also pointed out to council, that the property is assessed as if it's a storage space, a storage garage, and has been assessed like that since it was built in 1979 or 1980. Actually, it wasn't recorded until 1985 at all. So I'm very pleased to hear that your committee is taking that step forward. Of course, I'd like council to know that I'm quite disappointed that your committee is not recommending any further action on the use of this property. I don't think that the definition of a family, Swarthmore, is ambiguous at all. The definition says that it's, you know, biological family, people related by blood or marriage, and boarders and lodgers living in the dwelling. There's no question that the lodgers that are on that property or the renters that are on that property are not living in the dwelling. There's only one dwelling. There's no record of this property having been subdivided so that it's two dwellings. Is recorded and has always been recorded as a single family dwelling. It's not large enough for a conversion. The property isn't large enough for a conversion to two families. There's never been a variance to indicate that it can be used in any other way, and there's absolutely nothing ambiguous about this situation. So, of course, I'm quite disappointed that your committee has made this recommendation. I do absolutely support the use of property to the greatest extent possible. I mean, I think that that would indicate that that accessory dwelling could be used for incidental purposes, as the Barford family used it for many years when they had, you know, families staying there. Sometimes someone might sleep there overnight, and that would be an acceptable use. In fact, when Ms. Winsley first started renting it out on a short-term basis, I indeed thought that she had a very vibrant, like extended community, and that she had friends and family staying in that apartment building. It wasn't until I recognized that these were all strangers that I had a complaint about it. So, again, I'd like Borough Council to know that I'm very disappointed. I'm disappointed that the zoning officer has not taken her job to enforce the zoning code in a literal manner as is prescribed by the Pennsylvania statute seriously. I understand that that's, enforcing the zoning code is not a fun part of the job, but I think it's a job that should be taken seriously and, implemented seriously, not just say, oh, well, it's been used that way for many years and it's fine. So I am quite disappointed, and I hope that you would reconsider. Thank you.
I also wanted to share maybe 209 Riverview. I wanted to confirm what Linda did mention, which I think may not be what you guys said, is that there really isn't a history of rentals on that property. And that was, I've lived there for 18 years. It was used by the family who owned that house. It was either empty and used for storage or used to tend to by children, the elderly relatives in the house. So there really isn't a robust history of rentals. It was rented illegally to somebody for about 2 years, and we were asked if we wanted that to happen, and I didn't want to be mean, and this is why I've kind of stayed out of this, because I don't want to be mean to my neighbor, and I wish that you guys could understand some of what's been going on behind the scenes. You see the faces come out, but there's my house, and you're talking about every property is unique, that's a twin house. My house adjoins that house. My house is closer to that rental unit than theirs is. My yard is the nearest flat expanse of ground to that rental. So I have children running around my yard. I have their dogs pooping on my yard months at a time when they don't pick it up. I see the suitcases rolling up and down the driveway all day long, and my children are afraid to open the shades. Yes, we have stable renters in there now, but when we had different people coming up and down that driveway every day, I don't know if we define family that way. But if these renters go, then who comes in next? It's probably going to go back to every night. So I can tell you that that has not been used as a rental, and I can tell you that maybe the rights go to the property owner, but in a twin house, where that house is closer to my property and where I have much more exposure to that than the people who are running it do. I'm there all day. They both work full time. If there are problems there, I'm the one that sees them. I'm the one that deals with the fallout and the mess and the people running on my property. And I'm not saying I don't like them. I try to be a really good neighbor. I'm quiet and peaceful. This is really unusual for me to have to come up and do this, but other people are a whole lot better at the politics than I am. And I just want you to understand that I may not be the best spoken person, but I think it would be helpful for you to know there are two sides of what's going on in that property.
Thanks very much. I'm just gonna,
Can I respond to one point there?
yeah, I was also gonna do it, but you start.
Let me just, I believe the committee's decision is based on existing circumstances of the existing rental. The zoning hearing board did deny the ability of this property to be used for Airbnbs. That's not, the borough is not saying they will not take enforcement action in the event of short-term rentals. Under the circumstances that exist today, that's where the borough's decided not to take action.
Yes, that actually is correct. And I also want to say that the borough zoning officer has not acted in an arbitrary or capricious or flippant manner. This has been considered by the zoning hearing board and the planning and zoning committee. The borough solicitor has gotten involved. There is a long history here, which we're well aware of, going back to the 1970s, probably before at least most of us in this room even lived in Swarthmore. And as our borough solicitor, Bob Scotch, has said, the decision that has been arrived at, that is to say not to take enforcement action, is not to take enforcement action under the existing circumstances. If the circumstances should change in a different way, enforcement action could be taken or not, depending on how the circumstances change. So I hope, have I said that right, Betsy? So I hope, and I'm mostly just repeating what Bob said, but I hope you understand that this is not a carte blanche, either for 207 Riverview or anyone else in the borough to do whatever they feel like doing. So I'm going to call the public comment session to a close.
Wait, sir.
Yes?
Is it still open after your comment?
Please, yeah, sure, please, go ahead. And again, I hate to ask it, but please.
No, I don't mind. Judy Galgon, 327 Riverview.
Thank you.
I think your statement, we're not giving people carte blanche, you've given the owner of 207 exactly that. Exactly that. And when you say if something comes up and might change, well, please be specific. Tell us precisely what do we need to be looking for.
You're a lawyer, are you not? So you understand.
Not in this field,
you understand the concept, however, of treating things in a case-by-case basis. You have general rules, but general rules must be applied to specific fact situations, and that's what we're talking about. So the zoning code is being applied to a specific fact situation as it exists today. If the facts change, then when you apply the general rule to the changed fact situation, you may have a different outcome depending on what the changed facts are.
Could I ask for clarification on what you said has been an ongoing situation since 1970, I think?
The history of the property we can't go over all this now, but the history of the property is something that the zoning hearing board and the planning and zoning committee took into account, and with the assistance of the borough solicitor, took into account in deciding what to do about this situation, this existing situation today.
Meaning the use of it?
Mr. Scott mentioned that the zoning hearing board turned down an application or a request to run this as an Airbnb property, for example. Oh, that's not true.
That is not true.
Oh.
They denied the variance to the special exception to expand a bed and breakfast into the accessory building, and they did not rule on the request to use the accessory building for lodgers. So that is an inaccurate, what you described.
No, it is accurate. No, it is accurate, actually. But again, this is what I didn't want to have happen, because we're not holding a hearing here, right? The decision has been made. We welcome your comments, and we're happy to receive them, and we want to know how you feel about it. And I think we've got a pretty good idea how you feel about it. You mentioned how unhappy you are with at least some aspects of the situation and the decision, maybe not all of them. And we recognize that, and we're sorry that you're unhappy about it, but, you know, these decisions have to be made in a systematic way that's fair to everyone, and sometimes not everyone is happy with the outcome. I'm sorry. Is there any other public comment? Well, again, I don't want to get into a debate,
It's
so,
not a debate. I just want something on the record.
well,
This-
there's no record.
There's no record.
There's no record.
Right.
There's no record. But look, if there's something you'd like to say,
I mean, I just want to make it clear, the minutes really only reflect,
I know.
you've seen.
I've seen the minutes.
Okay.
I know
this is not a record. That's why I said we're not taking evidence, which is later going to be, you know, considered by someone.
I would like this council to know that the zoning hearing board decision granted the owners a special exception to run a bed and breakfast. They denied them a variance to the special exception to run the bed and breakfast in the accessory building. And they declined to rule on the request to use the accessory building for lodgers because there had not been a cease and desist order from the zoning officer. That's exactly what the zoning hearing board ruled. And there was one dissent from that aspect of the zoning hearing board decision as well, saying that there was grounds and that the zoning hearing board should have decided that second point about using the accessory building for lodgers.
All right, well, you know, thanks again for your opinions,
Right.
and we appreciate it. If there's no other public comment, I'm going to call the second public comment period to a close. Bob, anything new and different?
Well, it's James 10 minutes, but
I just have,
Oh, sorry.
that's okay, I just have,
Order here, thank you.
sorry, I have three things. The borough did submit a grant to the Department of Environmental Protection for three things for our recycling program. One is for a truck that would be a self-contained unit to collect leaves. The advantage would be lower operating costs, and it wouldn't compete with our other vehicles for plowing and salting, and so we could extend the season into the spring. Nether Providence is also applying for one. Unfortunately, while we love to share equipment, that's not one that we could share because we would use it at the same time. We also asked to purchase some more recycling bins because we're out. We've been out for a long time. And we also asked for a little bit of help with the pickup truck that we're already purchasing. We're allowed to do that with these grants. We can ask for reimbursement for things we've already purchased, and we do use that. So that went in today. It's due on Friday. I want to thank Dave Grady from Nether Providence Township, who also came later in the week after he had come to talk about the sanitary sewer ordinance they have there. He was tremendously helpful to at least setting up our website. Sorry, not our website, our Facebook page. So many thanks to him. Also wanted to sort of thank council. I think all people would be glad to know, and again, the spirit of helping out, that machine that you all agreed to let the Public Works Department buy last year that seems sort of expensive, the little tractor thing that goes down the tunnel. We've actually been able to help the school district out with the plowing of their sidewalks because it's so fast. We just make a run down their sidewalk, and they love it so much they actually have it in their budget to buy one as well. So we probably won't be helping them too much. They'll be using it all over the district, but it's always nice when we can help each other out like that, and it really doesn't cost anybody anything. And I think for the district, and they have trouble getting to all of their sidewalks open, and we know parents were a little tired of all the snow days this year, so at least we didn't contribute to any of those. That's all I have.
Thank you, Jane. Bob, sorry, your turn.
thanks, I don't know.
Okay, great. Is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.